Believe in Bigfoot? Dogman? Any cryptid? Are you skeptical?
Curious about the supernatural, conspiracy theories, the unknown? Then come join us as we explore facts, tall tales, and encounters on Creatures and Curiosities.
Hello and welcome to Creatures and Curiosities. I am David.
And I'm Jake.
And in this week's episode, we are going to be talking about the elusive little Irish leprechaun.
Yes.
And that, of course, is in honor of St. Patrick's Day. That's just right around the corner. About 3 days from now, we're going to be wolfing down some corned beef and cabbage.
It's going to be phenomenal. Yes, I can't wait.
Absolutely love it. There's nothing like going to a good deli and getting a corned beef pastrami sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
With the brown grained mustard and rye bread and stuff. The only way I think you can top that is the Russian dressing and sauerkraut.
Yeah, that's my favorite combo right there.
Absolutely got to love
Extra
it.
sauerkraut too.
Yeah. And every time I go into it,
I know it's coming. Yep.
You've been there. I tell them all the time. Extra sauerkraut. And then it comes out and you can't even see a layer of it.
It's like they're taking it from their personal stash and they're almost upset you asked for it.
I want the entire head of cabbage on that sandwich.
Yeah. Every bite, it should be pouring out because of how much there is.
I want to drop more than is actually in my mouth so that I can eat it off the plate later.
Yes.
And then I don't know what it is about them, but the little just boiled red potatoes.
Yeah.
They don't need butter. They don't need salt, nothing.
They don't need anything.
You just cut them up. They're melt in your mouth, delicious. And there's just nothing like a good St. Patty's Day meal.
Yep.
I love the soups that they have and all the little spreads. We used to go to a little place that had a St. Patrick's Day buffet. And they would have...
Oh, that's right, yeah.
The shepherd's pie. They would have pretty much anything that you could think of that was Irish, they would have in their spread.
And well made, too.
And well made. And the corned beef was always like melt in your mouth, just buttery, delicious with very little fat. You can get corned beef that's just got a fat vein through it that's the size of your fist.
Yeah.
And you get a little piece of meat. This place was like perfect.
Yeah.
A great meal. And you know what I always think of when I think of a leprechaun? Growing up, it's still available.
Yep. But
growing up, Lucky Charms cereal.
Yeah.
They're magically delicious. And I remember the commercials. I was always ticked, kind of like Tricks. You know how they could never catch the rabbit?
Yes.
And I just wanted the rabbit to be killed in one commercial. The same with the little stupid leprechaun. The kids always wanted to catch him, but he magically disappears, and all that kind of stuff. What I really remember about the cereal itself, though, was basically they just took alphabets. You remember those?
Oh, yeah.
And then they just chopped them up because they weren't, actual letters anymore. They were just little circles and X's and crap. Throw it in a box. And then they'd throw some nasty little dehydrated marshmallow in there that you couldn't wait to eat, right?
Yeah, it's the greatest thing ever.
But they'd soak in the milk and they just got a slime layer on them.
Yeah.
They puff up and rehydrate a little bit, not like a real marshmallow. And you're chewing on this little sugary slime bite.
Yeah.
And you couldn't wait for the next one.
It's delicious.
And you start picking them out, putting them on, like 12 of them on your spoon so that you could just get this sugar overload so you could become diabetic later.
Yeah, riddled with cancer from all the preservatives in there, yeah. And you can't wait.
Yeah, and it's actually technically one of the worst cereals out there. But I loved it.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it growing up. There was like no flavor to the actual little bits.
Oh, no.
And then
just like dried pieces of chalk or something.
It was horrible. I wonder why they were trying to catch that little leprechaun. They were probably going to beat him.
Yeah, for making the crappy cereal. Yeah.
I mean, because Captain Crunch, that one reigned.
Yeah.
Lucky Charms just doesn't have anything over Captain Crunch. I'm sorry. So this podcast obviously is going to be a little bit different than our cryptid podcasts. There is really no, and we're going to talk about a couple sightings, but let's face it, there's really no sightings of leprechauns.
Right.
A lot of people will say that they've seen them. A lot of people will say that they've caught them, but there's no evidence that we could get behind and actually say that it exists. So what we're really going to talk about here is just the legend or the folklore that surrounds leprechauns.
Right.
How they came about, what their origin was, and kind of where they are in modern day civilization, and what we like to think about leprechauns. So we'll start off as we normally do with a description of this little creature. If you guys have been with us for the last year, you'll know that we did our second episode on the Porterville gnome.
Yes.
Now, a gnome is very much like a leprechaun. And in fact, if you really kind of study the backdrop on all of these little mythical creatures from Ireland and the European nations and stuff, they're all kind of lumped together a little bit. There's some differences between them, but fairies, nymphs, sprites, leprechauns, goblins, elves, gnomes, they're all kind of the same basic makeup.
Right.
They're all either good or bad, mischievous little things. They're all tiny little creatures, and they all have like a specific little purpose. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about with the leprechaun, what his little purpose is when it comes down to the folklore. Now, to say that a leprechaun is evil or good, there really is no definitive thing behind that. They're like a gnome, you can say. Some gnomes were happy little creatures that helped you out in your barn.
And some were the Porterville gnome.
Yeah, they took care of your animals for you. They helped you do things. They would like clean up after you at night while you're sleeping. They'd tidy things up, and they were good little creatures. Then there's the little evil gnome.
Yeah.
That was eating your koi fish and flipping you off.
Yeah, exactly. Terrorizing you.
Tormenting families. Well, in the case of the leprechaun, we don't really have that. We don't really have stories of them being malevolent, nasty little being. I think it's widely understood that they don't like people per se. They don't want you around. They're very solitary little creatures. They don't like human interaction. And so I guess a lot of people would say, well, they're not very nice then.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that they're not nice. You're not them. They're not you, and they don't want to be part of your life.
I don't want people constantly coming up to my property and just walking around my property.
No.
So that doesn't make me mean. I just want to be
left alone.
Left alone, yeah.
Yeah, they're like little hermits.
Yeah.
I guess you could say. Anyway, we'll get into the description of a leprechaun, or at least what we now know them to be.
Yeah.
The leprechaun is this little diminutive supernatural being in Irish folklore, much like the elf or the gnome, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing. They're considered to be a lonely, like little solitary creature, but it's believed that they're closely related to the Clurishan and the Firdirg, both of which are classified as little solitary fairies. They have their own, you can look those up. I don't want to get into what they are, but the leprechaun is like a cousin to the Clurishan, and those little guys have their little niche as well in life. The leprechaun is usually depicted as this little bearded guy wearing a green coat and hat, although historically speaking, most people would tell you that the original leprechaun wore red. They wore little red pants, a little red coat. They had a little three-pointed hat that looked like a little triangle that sat on their head.
Yeah.
And so if you ever really look at pictures, old-time pictures prior to like 19th century, most leprechauns are going to be wearing red. That kind of shifted in modern day, probably due to four-leaf clovers and like the Celtic green and all that stuff. So they made them all of a sudden, they're wearing green outfits. They got the little top hat, now, or a little fedora, or what are those called? That little dome.
Like a bowler hat type thing. Yeah.
Yeah. They wear those. They usually they can be clean shaven, but most of the time they're depicted with like a little red beard. And these little guys stand anywhere between 2 and 3 feet tall, again, much like the gnome. They vary in weight, so there is no specific, these are fat little things or skinny little things. They're just like humans.
Right. Where you got some fat little things, and you got some skinny little things.
Fat little things. You got some skinny little ones. It depends how much corned beef and cabbage they're eating, I would imagine. They are usually old, wrinkled, and quite ugly. Now, I think back to the Lucky Charms one, and that was like a youthful, clean-shaven, kind of looked like Peter Pan or something.
Yeah, got to market to the kids.
But the reality is that in the folklore, they're almost always a dried up, wrinkled, haggard-looking, frightening thing, more like the movies depict, the horror movies.
Yeah.
So the little leprechaun is a skilled craftsman when it comes to making or repairing shoes. Quite often, they work as little cobblers for other little fairies. So, like Tinkerbell or something, she zooms in, and of course she wears slippers, but I guess if she needed shoes, that's who she would go to, right? So she's going to go to a leprechaun who makes their living at making and repairing shoes. They're also known to be expert musicians. They play a variety of little instruments, whether they're wind instruments or string instruments, but almost all leprechauns are considered to be a great musician. Now, I wasn't 100% aware of this, but I guess if you really think about leprechauns and what we know about leprechauns growing up as a child, there is no specific term for a female leprechaun. And that is because leprechauns are traditionally depicted as only being male, which begs the question, I suppose, how do they continue to exist when there's no procreation?
Right.
And so I actually read some articles on, are leprechauns gay? It's kind of like, are we really going to go there?
Yeah.
The little 2 to 3 foot tall gay guy running around, in his little green outfit. I mean, come on. But historically speaking, there are no female leprechauns. And so does a leprechaun just live forever? When they die off, how did a new one come into existence? If they're not born. And so, when you ask that question, it does kind of, are they like an earthworm? Can an earthworm mate with itself or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Some species of worm that can do that. I don't know. And so nobody really knows. So, if you were to try and research this, even if you came up with an answer, you're clearly a nut.
Yeah.
For even trying to come up with it. But since they are supposed to be these little diminutive spirits that are magical, do they just get created out of
like a phoenix or something,
thin air?
Yeah,
or anyway, I think it bothered people that there were only male leprechauns. And so as time went on, they started kind of creating stories of female leprechauns that they believe, what else are they going to come up with? But they believe they're just homemakers who take care of the little men leprechauns in their lives. So they don't work for a living. They don't really do anything. They don't have a particular skill other than to take care of men leprechauns, which is the way it should be.
I like it. Yeah.
I should have been a leprechaun. If not a dog man, a leprechaun. Now all of a sudden sounds pretty good, right? Just work on shoes all day long and be catered to by the woman.
I love it. They got the life.
Yeah. So technically, the female counterpart to a leprechaun would actually be considered a fairy. And I guess that sort of makes sense, and yet it doesn't, because then if she's a fairy, she's not a leprechaun.
Right.
And if she's not a leprechaun, then if they were to mate, how would she give birth to a leprechaun if she's a fairy? Wouldn't it be a crossbred situation where now you've come up with, a sprite or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have answers to that, and I don't think anybody does, because we don't have any leprechauns that we can ask.
Right.
Personality-wise, the leprechaun is known for being quick-witted, highly intelligent, and devious, often being a source of mischief for the unwary. And so I guess that's where you could make the jump that they're evil. They're not really evil. They just like to get into stuff. They're little mischievous creatures.
Right.
They're known for being extremely difficult to catch or trap.
Yeah, now see, my son knows this very well because every year...
And we were going to get into that.
He's building a leprechaun trap.
Right. And so how many has he caught?
0. And there's some good traps, I'm telling you. He's got bait set up. He's got all kinds of stuff going on, stuff to lure it in. And so far, I think it's 3 years in a row now he's been skunked.
There's many traps.
Yeah.
And so I kind of tried to look up leprechaun traps. Well, most of it is for children.
Right.
I want to know how to really catch one.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a whole lot on that. There is a book, How to Catch a Leprechaun. And so it kind of looks like a basic, not using like a dead weight because then you'd kill the little thing, right? But it's the box and stick.
That's what he did. He's done that.
So you do the box and stick method. Now, are you using gold coins? Are you using rainbow patterns?
He's done both. So he built a rainbow, even made fake clouds on the top of the box. And then at the bottom of the box, in the trap, he put some gold coins.
And he didn't catch anything?
Nothing. The trap got set off and his coins were gone, but the leprechaun.
Could have been a mouse.
Could have been.
Because
no droppings, though.
I think there's a reason for it. We live in Montana.
Yeah.
And getting into the next category here is the location of a leprechaun. Where are leprechauns?
Yeah.
And all of the research points to the fact that leprechauns can only be found in Ireland. Now, we're going to talk about something a little bit later that throws a little wrench in the works there.
Right.
But it's believed that leprechauns live in the moors, the forest lands, the caves, and the gardens of Ireland. And they're not found anywhere outside of Ireland.
Now, is this one of those situations, though, where it's like a Bigfoot is to a Yeti? You wouldn't call a Yeti a Bigfoot, but we're almost talking about the same thing, kind of. Whereas here, maybe it's not called a leprechaun, but we're pretty much talking about the same thing.
That's very possible.
Right.
And the reason it's possible is because they're so closely related to other little nymphs and little people. We did this, we talked about it in the gnome episode.
Yeah.
That every culture has little people. It doesn't matter if you're in the Pryor Mountains of Montana or if you're in Alaska or you're in the deserts of Arizona. Somewhere along the line, there's a belief that little 2 to 3 foot people exist and they can be good or bad. Most of the time, they're spiritual.
Yeah.
I just don't know if they're wearing little green outfits and whatnot, and they would be classified as a leprechaun.
Right.
So it's really difficult to answer that question. But never give up hope, right? I say he continues making traps.
He's already been talking about it.
Because once you make a trap and actually catch one, then there's some good things that could happen or some horrifying events that could happen, which we'll talk about later. So you have to be very wary. If he catches one, I need to come over, though.
Oh, absolutely.
You got to let me know immediately. Leprechauns are known to particularly like living in the hollow tree trunks of fairy trees. And I thought, what in Christ's name is a fairy tree?
Yeah.
I've actually never heard of one. Well, because it's not really a fairy tree. What it actually is a hawthorn tree or an ash. But there are beliefs and superstitions relating to both the hawthorn and the ash tree. Many people believe that if you cut them down or you damage one of those trees in any fashion, you'll be faced with a lifetime of bad luck. And so since the leprechaun knows that, they find that is a place of privacy and protection.
Right.
Because people are not going to go cut that tree down, nor are they going to go carve on it, cut limbs out of it, because they don't want the bad luck to follow them throughout their lifetime. So the little leprechaun takes advantage of that, and he lives in it.
Makes sense.
And he feels protected by it. It does make perfect sense that he would choose that. But, in the original folklore and stuff, they kind of lived in waters and underground. It's only been really of the last few centuries that they're in these trees and forest lands, and they're everywhere now. now they're in your garden at your house, eating your koi fish, right?
Yep.
They are known to prefer cool, rainy climates, which Ireland is perfect for that.
Yeah.
So getting into the origin story, leprechaun may actually come from an old Irish word called lucorpan, which means little body, or it can be derived from the Irish words leith and brogue. Leith meaning half, and brogue is actually a style of a low-heeled shoe or boot. So if you picture like when they're broguing a shoe, it puts like the ridges and the holes and the, like the design or the pattern in it, kind of like men's wingtip shoes.
Yeah.
How they always had the fancy stuff done on the front of the shoe in leather work. And so because the life brogue kind of means, that they're half working on shoes, it falls right in line with what their little job is in life, as being a little cobbler or a shoemaker. And so there is kind of an argument, and there's like 4 other possibilities of what leprechaun was derived from, but that's getting into too much.
Yeah.
And foreign languages that I can't even pronounce. But if you look it up, you'll see that there's multiple other explanations as to how the word leprechaun came about. The word leprechaun was actually first recorded in the English language in 1604 by way of a stupid comedy, which I hate to say the name because if your son's listening, there's a guy by the name of Thomas Dekker, and he actually had partnered with another guy, and they wrote this comedy called The Honest Whore. And after the original comedy was out there in the 1600s, so it was some weird, bizarre thing, this Thomas Dekker comes up with part 2 of The Honest Whore. And in that story, he refers to this little creature as a leprechaun. And so dating back, that's the first time the word leprechaun was actually used in English terminology. Now, I didn't even get into that. I started to look it up. I lost interest immediately. Humor in 1604 was just not, it's not like watching Step Brothers or something, what the Wedding Crashers or something like that. It was very dry and sick, and I couldn't get into it. So I can't tell you how the leprechaun interacted within the story. So I really can't comment on it because I lost interest within the first 2 minutes of reading it, The earliest recorded mention of leprechauns comes from the medieval tale about King Fergus Mac Letty of Ulster in the 8th century. Some people say it was late 7th century. Some people say it was 8th century, but splitting hairs there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So long ago, who cares? And in the story, the leprechauns were actually water sprites that were called the lucorpan, who tricked King Fergus into giving up his throne. So the story goes that while the king slept by the water, a group of the lucorpan emerged from the sea and attempted to drag the king into the water with them. And when his feet touched the icy water, he awoke and he grabbed hold of the tiny creatures. In exchange for their lives, they offered the king 3 wishes. And you can see where that translates to today.
Yeah.
So, this is 8th century, and we still talk about if you catch a leprechaun, you get wishes, right? So this was the original story of that, and it hung around for centuries. For one of his wishes, the king asked for the ability to breathe underwater. Kind of a stupid wish.
Yeah.
But that's what he wanted. So it was granted. They immediately gave him that ability. It did, however, come with a warning. They told him flat out that those powers would not work in a particular lake called Loch Rudrege. Its present day is called Dundrum Bay. Now, a lot of people theorize that the reason they told him that was because that's where they live and they didn't want him over there.
Yeah, sure. That's kind of was my thought was.
Yeah, so they were giving him a warning, you need to stay away because they ain't going to work there, to keep him out of their home territory.
Right.
But he goes anyway, and he was surprised to find that while swimming in the lake, he could actually breathe underwater. So he soon realizes that the warning was actually meant for his safety because the lake was home to this gigantic sea monster. So he's swimming around in the lake and he sees this horrific beast. And he's so startled, so taken back by it because this thing's hideous, that his face actually becomes permanently contorted in fear. The king escaped the monster, but when he came up out of the water, some of his men were standing at the shore's edge, and they were completely shocked by his appearance. He's just got this hideous face that's been completely contorted.
Yeah.
Well, they decide that, hey, we better just keep this guy's hideousness a secret from him and not let him know that he's now actually just a frightening looking creature.
Yeah. Especially back then.
Yeah.
Because nowadays.
And he's the king, he wants respect.
Exactly.
He wants all the women to love him and all that kind of stuff, and now
back then they were stoning people like that.
Right. Well, after a while, the king starts kind of ticking people off. And they grew to hate him over the course of a few years. And so one brave soul decides, I'm going to go up and tell him, you're hideous. So he does. He goes up and he tells him, I don't know if you've ever looked in a mirror, but, you're revolting to look at.
Yeah.
You make people sick. Well, the king takes one peek at himself and he realizes that this is something that the monster did to him. So he feels like, I need to take revenge. So what does he do? He hightails it out to that lake. Still has the ability to breathe underwater. So he figures he's going to go in and kill the monster for making him look the way he did. So he fights this monster, but this battle literally takes days. They're ingrained in tussling under the water and smacking each other and, whatever they're doing. And eventually the king wins and he kills this big monster. So he's pretty excited about that, but he's so exhausted from the fight that as he's trying to swim to shore, he's just got nothing left in him. So he dies. He drowns, So moral of the story, don't ask to breathe underwater.
Yeah. It's a terrible wish.
It's a terrible wish. Why wouldn't you want, good looks or...
If you gave me infinite wishes, I don't think that would ever come up.
No, I'm thinking not. So anyway, king's dead. And over 1,000 years later, the legend of the king was completely forgotten by the Irish people. But what did live on? Obviously.
Yeah.
The little leprechauns.
Of course, yeah.
Right? And so that's all people talked about for centuries was these little leprechaun. And those, of course, they were water sprites back in the day, but then over time they evolved into becoming what is now known as the modern day leprechaun. So that's how they began. And do you remember when we were talking about the Porterville gnome?
Yeah.
The water
babies.
Yeah, the water babies.
Yeah.
And those were little sprites. Now that was an Indian folklore that they lived in the water. They were these little sprites or water babies or elves or gnomes or nobody really knows what they're classified, but they were able to come out of the water and up onto the land. And so there was the possibility that that little gnome was actually one of the water babies that lived in that river. Well, this is the original account of how a leprechaun came into existence, and that's exactly what it was. They were water babies.
To me, it's just one of those credibility things where you're talking centuries apart in different parts of the world, and you have these things that you refer to as whatever. Water sprites, water babies, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Semantics at that point.
Semantics, all it is some like little diminutive spirit that crawled out of the water and became this little 2-foot tall person.
Yeah.
So in modern times, the leprechaun is thought to possess a hidden crock of gold coins, usually believed to be at the end of the rainbow, right? That's what we love to say.
Yeah.
Knowing full well that there is no begin and end of a rainbow, which makes it impossible for the pot of gold to be there. But hey, it looks like it should have contact with the ground and have an end point. Now, if you think about a little leprechaun being a cobbler, how much does a guy making shoes make? It probably wasn't a really good living.
Yeah,
right?
no.
You tie a bow or something on Tinkerbell's slipper and she gives you what? I mean, how much could it even cost?
Yeah.
But somehow, some way, they were able to save up all these gold coins. And so they became quite wealthy. I don't know how they did it, unless they're really gouging you.
They have to. Well, think about it nowadays. If you go to a cobbler, I mean, they don't really call them cobblers anymore, but if you go to a shoe store and get a custom pair of boots, you're not paying under $400 for those things.
Yeah, it's a fortune.
Yeah, $350 would be cheap.
Kennetrek boots here in Montana.
Yeah, or that Carter's Boots and Repair. Those guys just to fix up your boots.
Put a sole on it. It's $350.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So maybe they were. Maybe every pair of shoe I fix, you can give me a gold coin.
Yeah. Well, and now they've got crock pots full of them. Yeah. And over the course of time, it's believed that if you can trap a leprechaun, which your son needs to do,
he's going to do it. I know he will.
He has to. And it's not enough to just trap him. And a lot of people think, you catch a leprechaun, you get his pot of gold. But that's not the actual folklore. The actual folklore is you have to trap the leprechaun and then you have to keep him under a watchful eye. If you ever look away from him, he vanishes.
Gone, yeah. That makes sense.
Gone. The other thought is that you have to threaten him with violence. And I like that. If you're going to catch this little guy and stare at him, you might as well tell him, I'm going to beat you to it.
Yeah, pull a knife on him or something and be like, where's the gold?
Modern day highway robbery, So if you catch him, you keep your eye on him and you threaten him, there is a good possibility that he's going to share with you his fortune. Now, I don't know if he just makes it appear or if he takes you to the pot of gold and you got to fill your pockets. But what we do know is that the leprechaun is a master of trickery, and he can usually use your greed to get you to glance away, wherein he can make his escape. And how does he make his escape? Poof, he's magic.
Yeah.
Remember? They're magically delicious, and they try and grab that leprechaun, he just disappear.
It's easy. It's that easy.
That is the folklore. You take your eyes off of him, and poof, he's gone. He just vanishes into thin air, and that's it. But as long as you're looking at him, he can't leave. So what he tries to do, which would be simple, let's face it, if you were detaining me in some fashion, and I told you I've got $4.5 million over in the bank, I'll give you half of it if you just don't hurt me. And then you say, so you're going to give me, $2.25 million? And I'm like, yes, I will. All you got to do is go with me. All I have to do is get you to look away, to get your car keys, to take me or something. Poof, I'm gone.
Yep.
And how many people, your own greed would get in the way? How many people would have the presence of mind to never take your eyes off of that little creature?
Especially if you don't know that's part of the lore.
Right.
If you just assume that you caught him and you're good to go.
True. That's definitely true. But even if you did know, if he could just get you to look away for just a second, he's gone. And he is the master of using any means possible for escape.
You hear a loud bang, you're like, what the heck?
Yeah,
boom, there it is.
He's gone.
Yeah.
And that's it. So all your hard work in trapping this guy is gone in the instance of a glance away.
The thing about the threatening that worries me is that he is well-versed in trickery and he's a master at being mischievous, is that let's say I play the game and I do everything right, boom, and I get half the gold and we're done. Is there anything stopping him from just torturing me for the rest of my life after that to get his gold back? Or
no,
what are we talking about here?
In fact, if you really look into it, it says that pretty much nobody will ever walk away with a reward.
Right.
That he is so good at deceit, trickery, that even when you catch him and you get your wishes or you get your pot of gold, it's likely that you're not going to get it.
Yeah, you're done.
He's going to do something that he gets away and doesn't have to abide by that. What would you call it? An oral contract? Or,
magically binding one.
Magically binding contract, right. But as in the story of King Fergus, modern day wise, if he is captured, he has the magical powers to grant you, sometimes people will say one wish, some will say up to 3 wishes in exchange for his release. Now, let's talk about catching a leprechaun.
Yeah.
First off, like I said, there is no way to look up how do you catch one. It's always going to refer you to the children's box and stick and putting something in the box so that the little leprechaun goes in there. What you have to worry about is, even in that scenario, is when you lift the box to reach in to get him, if you're not quick enough, he's going to escape anyway.
Yep.
So I don't know how you ever get him out of there. But let's talk about really catching a leprechaun in real life. If you listen carefully, they say that you might actually hear a leprechaun using his little hammer to make or repair shoes, and it might give away his location. So if you're in Ireland and you happen to see a big hawthorn tree and you hear a little tink, 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 you're good to go. You know that little guy's in there and he's working diligently on a pair of shoes. And so that at least gives you an idea of where to locate him. Let him do his little work so that he's focused on it. And then you can reach into that hollow tree and hopefully snag him and yank him out of there just like Fergus did. And then at that point, technically speaking, he's supposed to reward you. But if he sees you or if he hears you, he will just simply vanish. And so catching him is still the difficult part.
Yeah.
Locating him might not be that difficult. It might be. Catching him, whole nother ball game. If you take your eyes off of him or you're not quick enough, he's gone in a flash anyway. So, but if you happen to get lucky and you manage to catch a leprechaun, you have to be smarter than him, or else he will easily trick you, which can have damaging results. They gave several examples, and all I can think of is the old jokes of the guy that walks into a bar and gets his 3 wishes, and they're filthy jokes. So I can't say them because we're supposed to be a clean podcast. But you know how they always make a wish that is interpreted differently than what they wanted actually? That's what they're saying that a leprechaun can do. He can trick you into making a wish that can be deciphered in a completely separate fashion. I'll just give a really quick example. So a woman catches a little leprechaun and he says, "What do you want?" She says, "I want a beautiful ass." And poof, she's got a big donkey next to her.
Gorgeous donkey.
He's gone.
Yeah.
He got his release. She got her wish.
Yeah.
That's not what she wanted. But so that's the concept here, is that by trick or deceit,
he's getting away.
He's getting away, and you might not be getting anything that you really wanted. So they're horrible little creatures is really the bottom line. And they hate people too, so you know that he's going to do that.
Oh, he's going to win, yeah.
He's frustrated that you caught him.
Right.
First off. And then if you outsmart him in any fashion whatsoever, you know he has to seek revenge.
Yes.
And so...
And that's kind of what I was mentioning earlier, or if there was some possibility of me outsmarting him, which is low, and getting him to get the gold or the wish, he's going to get revenge on me.
Yeah.
So you just live in the rest of your life in fear. Like you're going to wake up to this guy stabbing you or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I just sent you, remember the Trilogy of Terror thing with the little doll?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I sent you that video.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
I had talked to you about how she's stabbing the floor at the end, smiles, and has that doll's teeth.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just thought of that.
That's what would be happening to me.
But that little thing would torture you.
Yep.
And you'd wish that you never saw it.
And it might be little things, but you know what they say, like death by 1,000 cuts, like every time you wake up, you put your feet on the ground but there's dog pee right there. And you're like, I got to clean that up. And the next thing you trip. And then the next thing something breaks. And then, and it slowly builds up until.
And you find out it's really
just a leprechaun.
It wasn't dog pee.
It's totally.
He's in there torturing
He's
you.
just totally getting you.
They say to use those 3 wishes wisely, which I just gave one silly example. But they have said that people who think that they can outsmart a leprechaun and selected their 3 wishes, sometimes they would go insane just trying to think of what to wish for, or their wishes backfire and something bad happens. Well, that makes perfect sense to me. The example I gave. Things can be determined differently. I may want extreme wealth or something like that, And then you get the wealth, so now all your kids are kidnapped by people for ransom.
Yeah, the cartels got them on video and stuff.
And so that's kind of what they're getting at is just be careful if you ever catch one, what you do with it.
And who knows, maybe we're over here bashing King Fergus. Maybe he didn't wish to breathe underwater. Maybe he said something else and the guy was able to twist his words into, now you could breathe underwater.
Right.
Don't go into this lake. And he's like, well, I might as well test it out if that's what I got.
Yeah, and then look what it got him. Death.
An ugly mongrel face and then death.
So one of the biggest tips that can be bestowed upon man is to never listen to what a leprechaun has to say, no matter what, because leprechauns are great mind players and they'll say anything to completely confuse you and you'll end up making the wrong choices, the wrong wishes. They're going to get their escape. Probably the best thing to do would just be to beat that little thing to death and not even get your wish. And just say, I caught a leprechaun, here it is, because you'd be wealthy.
Yeah.
If you actually had a little dead leprechaun.
Oh, I'd have the taxidermied and everything.
Oh, yeah, because they could do an autopsy on it. You'd be worth millions.
Yeah.
So you don't need to wish. Kill it.
Yep.
Call it a day. I mean, that's a horrible thing to say, I suppose, but
you got to think,
that beats the alternative.
Is its family going to take revenge out on you?
Oh,
Next thing you know, you wake up and there's 15 leprechauns in your room.
Oh, yeah.
All with those little hammers tapping them on their hands.
Kind of like that movie, There's Something in the Barn.
Yeah.
They go on a murderous spree.
You think everything's good.
Yeah, that's terrible. So they say that even though a leprechaun is extremely smart, cunning, wily, trickster, you name it, that they can be fooled. But it is highly suggested that if you ever do spot a leprechaun, that you're better off to just pass him by without even taking any notice to him, because you can end up in more trouble than it's worth if you decide to chase after him. Yeah. And, that makes perfect sense to me. It'd be hard. I think if I saw a leprechaun, I'd have to try and snag him.
Yeah.
But I could also understand why you might go insane trying to figure out what to wish for. Because what would you wish for?
To breathe underwater.
Because people always say, well, fame or fortune or this or that. That's always going to be your demise.
That's going to be, that's going to cut you down.
Then you can wish for things like world peace or something. But, then that turns, into biblical prophecy and it's the Armageddon and it's the end of the world because there's peace in the Middle East.
You could wish for perfect health or something, but then you just live forever and everybody around you dies.
Do you remember the horror movie where the guy does live forever?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think I saw that one.
You didn't see that one? Oh, yeah. And no matter what happened, he couldn't be killed. And so they would, I think it was either Twilight Zone or a Tales from the Crypt or something, one of those horror things. But they ended up like cutting him up at the end. And I don't even know why, but he was chopped up. But you see all this flesh crawling, on the ground and trying to come back together and stuff because he can't die. And then there was the Twilight Zone episode where the guy with the books was the last man on earth, but he broke his glasses.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that one, yeah.
And he couldn't read. There's always a twist.
Yeah.
Fate is fate. If you had wishes, I can see how they could always backfire on you.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I would wish for. And so that they say sometimes given the opportunity to make 3 wishes would drive you insane. You just wouldn't know what to do next, especially if your first one backfired.
Yeah.
You wish for something and poof, there it is, but it's not what you wanted. So you got to take that one back. Now you only got one wish left. So I don't know. There's been a lot of things on that.
Yeah.
The genie in the bottle stuff, jokes and movies and stuff, how it's backfired. And I can see that that's probably what would happen. So I think he just beat the leprechaun to death and
put it in a shadow box on your mantle.
Put it in a shadow box and call it a day.
Yeah.
And then you can have an elf on a shelf for real.
Yeah. Move that little guy around the house.
Yeah. So getting into where are leprechauns now? I mean, if this was a folklore for thousands of years, and where are they? Where are they hanging out? Are they in these hollow trees all over Ireland or what? Well, I found an answer to it that was actually kind of startling. I don't know if I believe it, but I'm going to throw it out there. And people will probably say, oh, no, you've lost your mind. But now we have in Washington, they made it illegal to kill a Bigfoot.
Right.
You can't hunt a Bigfoot. I think Canada did it.
I don't know.
It was Canada first, and then Washington followed
I know
suit.
Washington did. I didn't know about the Canada thing, but I believe it.
Yeah. This is going to be similar. So, hold on to your socks on this one. Historically speaking, there were millions of leprechauns in Ireland at one time. They lived in clans in every county throughout Ireland, and they lived underground. So they're below earth. And they worked underground for the most part, just digging and mining gold, particularly in Antrim, Wicklow, Monaghan, Kerry, Clare, and Tipperary. They have since all died out or disappeared, except for 236 of them, which I find incredible, right?
Yeah.
There's now only one place left in Ireland where they exist. They live in a cavern below Slieve Foy Mountain in the Cooley Mountain Range, which towers above the town of Carlingford. And that is in the County Louth of Ireland. They came from all parts of Ireland to live there as their numbers dwindled all over Ireland, and they formed the last remaining colony now in that Carlingford area. Of the 236 that still exist, there are a few representatives from each of the counties that had survived, and sometimes they've been known to visit their original homelands, so there's a slight possibility of seeing them anywhere in Ireland. But it is known that they return each night to their home in Carlingford. And it's suggested that if you ever want to see a leprechaun for yourself, that you have the greatest chance of seeing them in the town of Carlingford. A leprechaun may actually show itself to you as a leprechaun in the traditional form, or sometimes they will present themselves to you as children. And in that particular region, they're actually known by the locals as Carlicans. So they're a leprechaun that lives in Carlingford, so they call them Carlingcons. So initially I was thinking, well, of course they present themselves as children because they're children.
Yeah.
They're the kids that live in Carlingford.
Yeah.
They're not leprechauns. That's the skeptical side of me.
Right.
But then I read on, and all of the remaining leprechauns, all 236 of them, are now a protected species by the European Union.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. The area known as Slieve Foy Loop, which is there at the mountain range, it's like a public hiking trail, but it has officially been protected land specifically for the leprechauns that live there under the European Habitat Directive. So you have a governmental agency,
yes,
that is acknowledging the existence of 236 leprechauns that live in Carlingford, and they're protected.
They are protected, and their land is protected.
And their land is protected.
Yeah.
Now, there has to be something to that.
There has to be something to that. So you could make and anybody from Ireland, if I'm off, correct me, but you can make the leap with the Washington thing, right? Like, let's say you can't hunt Bigfoot, it's illegal. And the reason you're doing that is not because you believe in Bigfoot, but because you don't want people out there shooting each other on accident, some hunting accident because you saw somebody walk by in camo, thought it was a Bigfoot, you popped them. But they don't hunt in Ireland like we hunt in America. So it's not like there are people out there with their 30-06s running around.
In a township, too, right?
Exactly. Going around looking for leprechauns. So to me, with that in mind, the only rational thing would be they're real. And the government knows they're real, and they've made them a protected species. I don't know why they've made them protected, but they know they're real.
So people don't try and catch them.
Yeah.
For 3 wishes.
Yeah.
I wonder what the penalty is for disrupting the life of a leprechaun.
I don't know.
I guess you could be charged with kidnapping or something.
Yes, you could be in some Irish prison or something.
Yeah. I really should look into that directive and see what it has to say.
Oh, absolutely.
As far as how are they protected? I mean,
maybe in there it'll explain why they're protected.
Yeah. That's something I should have done, but I ran out of time.
Yeah.
To be quite frank. But anyway, come on, that lends some credibility to the fact that there's leprechaun existence, right? When a government entity acknowledges the existence, protects them as a species, and protects their land.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
Right.
So
it's not crazy because it's real.
Because it's real.
Right. But I get what you're saying. Yes, it's
right. So, I started this whole thing on Leprechaun with the idea of, it's just a great little story.
Little kid's bedtime story or something.
For St. Patty's Day, it's an appropriate podcast for March. And then you come across this, that the government protects them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's kind of like mermaids. Kind of, you open your eyes when you see that there's way more evidence of their existence than you initially thought.
Right. Because even if, thinking more on it, even if the idea is, well, we don't really think that. The reason we put this directive into place is because we don't want people chopping down the trees, looking for these things. Well, then you just make that illegal.
Yeah.
You just say that you can't
chop down a hawthorn or an ash.
Even here in Montana, to get a Christmas tree, you have to get a tag. You can't just go out there and chop down a tree.
Right.
So you just do something like that. Hey, you're not allowed to chop down trees.
Yeah, but to actually say,
because of leprechauns,
this is a protected species.
And they're protected land, so you can't do, So
gotta be real.
It's got to be real.
Yeah. I'm buying it.
I'm sold.
Totally buying it now. As far as sightings go, very minimal.
Yeah.
Why don't you cover sightings real quick?
In 1989, a pub landlord named P.J. O'Hare, over there in Carlingford, County Louth, claimed that he heard screams from a well and found the remains and clothing of a leprechaun, which is now on display in his pub.
That's crazy.
Right.
He actually has the remains, like the physical body?
And that's what I don't know.
Of a leprechaun. That's what it says.
Right.
Found the remains and the clothing.
Because if you have just the clothes on display,
anybody could make that.
You could easily write that off as a business tactic.
Yeah.
You're going to get more people into your pub, sell a couple extra drinks. There's the thing right there. You could take pictures with it. I couldn't care less. Go about your day. But to actually have the remains as well.
It's kind of sick in a way.
Yeah.
Going to have yourself a Guinness and you got to look at a little dead leprechaun in a glass case.
But I would go have a Guinness there just to see that little
100%.
Yeah. Because he did
corned beef, cabbage, Guinness, and a dead leprechaun.
You can't beat that.
You can't beat that. And even though this guy has this little thing, from what I understand, every year they have like a little annual leprechaun hunt.
Of course they do.
So the townspeople come together. Now they don't really hunt leprechauns because they're a protected species by their government.
Yeah.
But they hunt for like a little plastic rendition of a leprechaun.
Right.
And, whoever wins it probably gets a free Guinness or something.
Yeah.
But leprechaun's a big deal there.
Because they're real.
They're real.
Yeah. It's just like all these towns that we've gone over with their cryptid. They have a statue. They do a little annual festival. It's because it's real in that area.
Right.
And what better way to recognize it?
I'm telling you, if I was PJ, I would probably invite the leprechauns to my pub. Like
free drinks.
Thursday night, free Guinness for all leprechauns.
Yeah.
Just to see.
And I know they're magical.
But then they come in and see their little dead friend in a glass case.
Oh, they'd wreak havoc on that place.
Man. Be like a bunch of little serial killers with hammers. But anyway.
So moving on, in 2006, an NBC 15 segment showed a leprechaun in South Crichton, Mobile, Alabama. The segment was viewed over 28 million times. Now, do you remember this one?
I do.
Yeah.
Now, I was hoping, to be quite frank, that somebody got the leprechaun on camera.
Right. But that's not the case.
I watched it over and over because they kept showing the tree that they saw it in.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to look in the tree to see where is the leprechaun.
No.
And it's not. It's just members of the community. Mass hysteria.
It's what it is.
Yeah. Because as we discussed earlier in the podcast, they are only located in Ireland. There's 236 of them left. They're in Carlingford. They're not in Alabama.
Yeah.
Now, could they have seen a gnome?
Maybe.
The Porterville gnome. We wanted to know where he went. Well, Mobile.
Yeah, clearly.
That's where he went. But anyway, it was a little disappointing.
Yeah.
that it was just a bunch of hysterical people screaming that, they wanted the pot of gold and they were going to cut the tree down.
And then remember it cuts to the guy who's got the quote unquote leprechaun flute.
Right.
Just looks like a pipe that
it looked like a pipe bomb or something. And he was going to play it and lure it out and all that. Yeah. So anyway, funny video that it went that viral. And then the next thing that you're going to cover here, I kind of don't understand this, but go ahead.
Yeah. So in 2023, the National Leprechaun Museum in Dublin praised the Crichton Leprechaun News report as, quote, one of the most significant pieces of documentary film over the last 20 years, end quote.
I saw nothing in that newscast.
I don't get it.
That I would say was proof that there's existence of a leprechaun in Alabama.
Because then they go on to announce that they would certify the Crichton sighting as a, quote, genuine, end quote, leprechaun sighting. Now, I just don't... Genuine sighting? There's nothing on the video.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of people hysterical, filming a tree, pointing at it, screaming, there's a leprechaun in that tree.
One lady even was like, it's probably a crackhead.
Yeah.
Because it's just ridiculous.
Well, it was.
Yeah.
Probably the whole community of crackheads.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of them was hired in a kite and said he saw something, and the rest of them just jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah. Now, if you did PJ's thing, when he's got the clothes and stuff.
If you walked in there and saw a little carcass in a glass case and his little outfit next to him or something, like in a shadow box.
Even if it was the decrepit little body of a chipmunk that he put next to a clothing for a leprechaun, I would still take that more than this news clip.
Over this one.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
It is. Moving into popularity of the leprechaun, I don't even think that we have to go into this too much. There were many leprechaun movies.
Yeah.
There were at least 8 of just the Leprechaun series.
Right. Which the first one's the best.
First one's obviously the best. And I made note of the fact that in 1993, that was Jennifer Aniston's feature film debut. Kind of like Halloween's Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's so young, and it was like her feature first thing that she was out there in and then became a great movie star over the time. Jennifer Aniston was in this Leprechaun episode that spanned into Leprechaun 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And they're hysterical to watch. It's a horror, and he's a hideous little leprechaun.
Yep.
But he's just a serial killing little thing.
He's a madman,
Hates people, and he kills everybody. Aside from the movies, there's a bunch of little documentaries out there and other little TV shows that kind of touch on leprechauns and stuff. And you can look those up, if you're interested in seeing any of those. But as far as like our modern day leprechaun stuff, we have Notre Dame, of course, the Fighting Irish, they have a little leprechaun as one of their mascots. Yep. The Boston Celtics have Lucky, the leprechaun, Lucky Charms that we talked about earlier, obviously, with the nasty little marshmallows. And then, of course, I always like to look up to see if there's any festivals.
Yeah.
Lizard Man, Rougarou, all the festivals across this country that celebrate the cryptid in their area. There's nothing specifically for a leprechaun. So really, it just kind of boils down to St. Patrick's Day festival.
Which is kind of unacceptable.
Kind of unacceptable.
Yeah.
I think he should be showcased at least.
I mean, they're a protected species. They should for sure be shown. Come on.
I guess if you go to a St. Patrick's Day festival anywhere in the world, you're kind of technically celebrating the little leprechaun.
Yeah.
Now, we probably, I don't know that I'm ever going to make it to Ireland. I was supposed to go in the summer with my cousins. We were going to go on a cruise, and it covered part of Ireland. Had I have known this stuff, I would have to go to Carlington.
Oh, absolutely.
I got to see one.
Yeah.
I didn't make it there, but maybe bucket list.
Yeah.
We got to go on a leprechaun hunt.
And get arrested because we hunted
and
them.
And get arrested because it's a protected species and we'll be sitting in a European jail cell somewhere. Anyway, that's all we got on leprechauns. Hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about them. That's probably more than I needed to know about leprechauns.
Yeah.
But it's
good stuff.
Definitely interesting.
Yeah.
I'm still, again, looking more forward to the corned beef and cabbage than looking for a leprechaun. But got anything else?
No, just son, get to working on your trap. I know you can catch one, buddy.
I'll tell you what, you catch one and you're going to become famous.
Yep.
Don't make any wishes. We'll kill it.
Yeah, we'll take it down. Don't accidentally make a wish, buddy.
Yeah, but get on that trap. Our next episode is going to be on the Alabama White Thang.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a fun one. That was suggested by one of our listeners.
Yeah.
And
thank you for that, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to our show and letting us know about a cryptid that's in your area. We look forward to kind of showcasing you on that episode as well.
Yeah.
And that's all we got. So we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the show and you want to help us out, then go ahead and give us a follow, leave us a review, and don't forget to turn on the automatic download button so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And as always, if you've had any experiences, stories, thoughts, comments, or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to cryptidfanatic@gmail.com. Let us know if you'd like to be on the show or just have your story featured during one of our episodes.